Today, I'm joined by Nick Barton, CEO and MD of the Barton Partnership. How are you today, Nick? How are things?
Yeah, good, Conor. How are you?
Can't complain. Nick, for the people who are watching and maybe don't know yourself, do you want to introduce yourself and your business?
Yeah, sure. So the Barton Partnership, which I founded 17 years ago, we're a niche executive search firm that provides sort of talent solutions, an end-to-end talent solution. We operate across strategy and transformation. And what I've created over the last 17 years is a business proposition that serves both a recruitment service and a consulting service globally across all sectors and industries. So our niche specialism is the type of individual that we work with, typically individuals that have worked in a consulting environment. I've got that consulting toolkit at a senior level. We recruit across all industries and sectors, including private equity and into their portfolio companies, financial services, professional services, publicly listed organizations, public sector, but that's globally. So we have 3 head offices: London, New York, Singapore, with adjacent offices in Paris, Hong Kong, and Sydney as well. And as I say, it's that end-to-end talent solution that we're really created our brand around, which is we can provide fractional consulting services, independent consulting solution, which is effectively our interim business, and our permanent search business. And we're about 100 people now across those 5 locations.
Cool. And both sides of the business, the consulting piece and the more traditional recruitment piece, seem to be doing really well at the moment. I've seen that you've been sort of mentioned in Forbes as one of the top management consulting businesses for 2024, and obviously the APSCO award you received yourself personally. Yeah,
no, it's humbling to be recognised, obviously, given the effort that we've put into creating a proposition like this. But the consulting business has been recognised by Forbes and also the Financial Times as well as one of the leading management consulting firms, which is fantastic. As a business, APSCO awarded us best recruitment company for the size of organisation that we are, and I was humbled to achieve Business Leader of the Year this year as well. Along with Entrepreneur of the Year at the Recruiter Awards as well. So I managed to get a double in, which was great.
Always nice to get the recognition for the hard work, but it's I guess it's been a long old hard road to sort of get to this point.
Absolutely.
If we sort of go back sort of 17 years or so, I mean, what sort of led you to start your own business in the first place?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I've grown up in a family of entrepreneurs, so that's always been sort of part and parcel of sort of my upbringing. But I stumbled into recruitment like most people do. I was packing boxes in a warehouse. I was studying to be an osteopath part-time. I worked in a fashion company. I then stopped doing osteopathy and carried on working in the fashion company, in the head office, getting the garments made. I then decided it wasn't for me. My girlfriend at the time, and my wife, suggested I get into recruitment because she was working in recruitment. So I applied to an advert for a fashion recruitment company, so I knew the industry and obviously they taught me how to recruit, and that's where I fell in love with recruitment. And one thing led to another, and I decided actually I liked recruitment more than the fashion industry. The fashion industry wasn't particularly well paid, but I wanted to work in an industry that I really could buy into and get some interest in. I think empathy is absolutely crucial in that regard, and came across a firm called Ashbury Marsden, who at the time were purely banking focused. But I met with the founder and owner for a coffee, and he was talking about this area called strategy, which in sort of 99, 2000 was a relatively new concept from a recruitment point of view. And I was still young, living at home, and I thought, well, I bought into him. I was really bought into him. He's, an unbelievable sales individual, built a successful business, great entrepreneur, really, truly, an inspirational guy. And so I thought, well, if I've got the opportunity to work with him and build out something new from scratch, let's give it a go. And that's what I did. So I joined Ashbury and worked alongside Paul, built out this new strategy practice. It became the most profitable part of the business, and we were the leading player in the space. And then we sold the business in 2007 through an MBO, and by that stage, having joined as a consultant, I became a director and a shareholder in the business. And that sale gave me the funding that I needed to secure my family and start the company. And so I guess for me, it was always a natural journey and something that was always been, I guess, to a point in my blood, but circumstances sort of fell into place that gave me the opportunity to do that. And I was very fortunate in that regard.
It's one of the things I really do love about recruitment is that no one actually meant to get into it in the first place, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel a lot of people fall into it, but it's a great way to
yeah, I mean, you don't, I've never met anyone that's gone to university to study to be a recruitment consultant. I mean, that's,
no.
But at the same time, the job satisfaction you get from this industry is incredibly high. So quite amazed around that point.
Yeah. I guess what were the early days like? I mean, in terms of the nitty gritty, with long hard yards to win those early clients and close those early deals.
Yeah, hard. Yeah, I mean, it was eat, sleep, work, repeat, sort of almost 7 days a week. I mean, it was recruitment even today is built around relationships, and having built up the practice at Asprey Marsden, I was fortunate that the majority of the relationships I'd built there and established came with me when I started the Barton Partnership. But it was the classic sort of pounding the pavements and pressing the flesh and building out the brand and the reputation. I say in those days, I mean, I say that and I sound like my dad, but in those days, the opportunity to engage the market through technology was limited, and so it really was a case of putting in the hard yards and making sure that you were properly engaging people in person to build up those relationships and that rapport, empathy and trust, as I like to phrase it. And so when you're starting a business, you've got to be a master of everything. And so winning the business, engaging the candidates, delivering that service, running a company, hiring, training, retaining, etc., looking at the accounts, looking at marketing as part of that as well. So it was an all-encompassing role. But we were fortunate in the fact that in the early days I was successful in hiring some very good people and kept hiring very good people, and as a result of that continued to build the business organically over that period of time.
Cool. And I guess imagine going back 17 years ago, and even sort of before you started your own business, there's been ups and downs in the markets, and I imagine it's changed greatly. I mean, how has the market changed since you sort of first started out?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think about the challenges that we've experienced, I mean, in 2007, I started a company just at the start of the biggest downturn in the financial markets. We then had COVID. We've had obviously Brexit. And then we've had whatever people are labeling the last 18 months. So we've had in the last 17 years 4 quite significant shifts in market conditions. And so, as a business owner, what's been challenging is really sort of defining what a strategy could be when there's so much uncertainty in the market. And so, the market has definitely evolved. I mean, without question, when you look at it today, and I don't think this will be a surprise to everyone, it's become a lot more virtual and by nature then a lot more transactional, which I think is a bit of a shame. And it's one of those aspects that we're trying to sort of, recultivate within the business now, because clearly, we're hiring a lot of junior people coming out of university that really only understand how to engage via Teams or Zoom or Google or whatever. But the reality is we work in a people-led, humanized business that requires human engagement. And so, the market has definitely become more transactional. It's become more effective in terms of engagement. Obviously, there's a lot more tools, technology-wise, platforms, etc., that gives us the ability to engage even out of hours. And so, I think clearly as a result of that now, there are more opportunities to engage without necessarily, commuting for half an hour to a meeting, having a meeting for an hour, then commuting back. It's giving you greater access from a marketing point of view now, the opportunity to do webinars and podcasts. It gives you the opportunity to extend to a wider audience. It's created efficiencies, right, beyond the realms of what you could possibly imagine sort of even 5-10 years ago. AI now and the ability to format CVs in a couple of seconds, create profiles, etc., engage the clients automatically through CRM systems. It used to be very, very convoluted, on the old sort of profiles and different CRM systems that used to be available in the market now. But where technology has taken the business is, the reality is, a successful recruitment company isn't defined by the number of heads they have in the business. It's about how efficient each consultant can be. You could have 100 consultants working inefficiently, or 50 consultants embracing technology and generating more revenue. And so, a successful recruitment company today isn't going to be defined by headcount size. It's going to be defined by their adoption and employment and engagement of technology.
Yeah, I don't know if you follow any of like James Osborne's stuff with the recruitment networks, but he had a great quote on a speech at the last recruitment expo, which was AI won't replace recruiters, but recruiters using AI will replace recruiters who are not using AI.
Yeah,
and I think
absolutely.
Doing more with less is becoming more and more important.
Yeah, I think the danger with it though is there's so much out there that you could easily fall into the trap of adopting too much.
Yeah,
and I think where organizations have to think carefully when they're looking at their tech stack and the adoption of technology, and especially AI, is the adoption and usage within the business. And what that successful barrier would look like, what that threshold for success is going to be, rather than just keep plugging something in and saying, oh, well, this could do this and then that can do that. Well, unless you've adopted it consistently across the business, it isn't going to add a tremendous amount of value. So I think the adoption of technology, and I think the less is more approach is, in my view, probably the better way to go when it comes to technology adoption in this day and age, because there's so much out there.
Yeah, unless you can get the consultants using it and the behaviours and process in place, you're just
going
down the drain and wishing at that point. So what does your tech stack and toolkit sort of look like at Barton Partnership? You're a HireAra customer, but what else are you using?
Yeah, so we've got a number of products now. I say a number, I mean I won't say a huge amount. So our CRM system is born through Salesforce. Our data platform is Power BI, which overlays that as well. In conjunction with that, now, as you know, we are a customer, a very happy customer of HireAra. We've just brought on board a new ED&I platform called Mixel as well, which interlaces into that system. And now we're road testing Copilot, right, which will sit across all of that as well. And I think that, coupled with obviously the usual suite of Microsoft products, Teams, etc., I think we're at a stage now where we've got all the products we need to create the greatest level of efficiency. And I think that we've still got to be very mindful that technology isn't going to replace the recruiter. It just makes the recruiter more efficient, right?
Yeah.
But recruitment still needs human interaction. And I don't know about you, but one of my frustrations with technology is the fact that it's enabled people to engage the market 24 hours, 7 days a week. And I get an email at 3 o'clock in the morning from someone based in the UK saying, "Hi, Nicholas, just wanted to follow up on my previous email. Would love to have a conversation with you." And I'm thinking, well, there's no way this guy has just emailed me at 3 o'clock in the morning. They've got some AI bot working behind the scenes. And I think that's where technology goes the wrong way, right? Because you can automatically tell between a genuine email and a spam email. And I think that's perhaps the negative side of technology in this current market.
Yeah, because you're right. There's no way that this candidate's emailing you at 3 in the morning. If they are,
no,
that's scary. If they're emailing you at 3 in the morning.
But then when you've got a product like HireAra, which reduces sort of formatting time from minutes down to seconds, when it gives you the opportunity to create bios, which typically would take a consultant 10 to 15 minutes to capture in seconds, then that's the opportunity, right? If you can give a consultant at least an hour, if not 2 hours back a day through the technology that you've employed in the business, that could be 5 to 8 to 10 hours a week. You could almost create half a day to a day's worth of efficiencies, giving that consultant the opportunity to spend more time engaging their market, going out to meetings, getting on the telephone. There's the money. That's the opportunity. That's what you want to target, and that's what you want to aim for.
Yeah, and I think that's been a bit of a shame since COVID and since the rise of like Teams, for example. It feels like consultants are getting out there and meeting people as much as they used to be. And I know my last year in recruitment versus my first year in recruitment, I won a hell of a lot more client meetings in my first year because we were targeting them more, and it's almost like it's shifted.
People forget that people buy people, right?
Yeah.
And people remember someone if they've had that human engagement, if they've had that physical engagement with them, if you've sat down in front of them, you're more likely to register in their memory rather than just, what was the name of that person that sent me that email with the CV? Actually, I met so-and-so for a coffee and they were a great person and they really know their market and they've got their finger on the pulse. And I really, I engage with them really well. I want them to work with me, right? I want them to take me out to market as a candidate. I want them to help me find this individual for my team. And that's one of the things that we're driving here. And we do it very well here already, I have to say. But, it's a constant reminder to individuals that actually, rather than sending an email, pick up the telephone, right? Rather than having a virtual meeting, go and meet them for a coffee, breakfast, lunch, dinner, etc.
Yeah, I think the wait for a coffee at Costa and your good chit chat in between is almost as important as the actual content of the meeting itself, right? You get an insight into people's personal lives and you build relationships, you build rapport.
100%.
You maybe don't have teams. Cool. Yeah. So I guess we're in agreement. The point of tech is to automate away admin style processes to free up consultants' time to get out there, build those relationships, be it on person or on the phone. I guess, where do you see the tech going next? What if you could, would you like to automate away next from a consultant's day to day?
Oh, there's a question. What would I take away? It's a really good question, actually. I think the short answer is, I think where we are now is that I think there are the products in play that create the opportunity for the recruiters that they need today. I don't believe, and listen, never say never until something comes along, but are you asking me, do I see a gap in the market and what is that gap to plug? The short answer is right now, no. I think with the adoption of AI and how that is continuing to grow in terms of its impact in the recruitment industry, that is where you'll see a greater opportunity. But I think it's about it's the administration aspect of the job, reducing that, creating greater efficiencies. Products like HireAra, they're at the top of their game in that regard, right? Copilot, that's going to create greater efficiency through system usage. Having a telephone conversation and having that conversation, or even a Teams call, the conversation is transcribed. The notes are then digested and put straight into your CRM system. That's 15 minutes worth of administration easily, per call. All of the products you need right now to create greater efficiency, I believe, are available. It's the adoption of those products that I still believe is the challenge for most organizations, and the utilization of those products. Do I think there's a gap in the market for something? Is there something that could come into the market to create greater efficiency? I don't know, but that isn't to say that there wouldn't be or couldn't be something. No. I think more,
you don't know until you see it, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I'm comfortable that what we are using right now has created the greatest level of efficiency we could possibly want to create in the current climate.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Copilot as well. We use it in our CRM, and it just if you don't know how to do something in the CRM, being able to use Copilot to point you in the right direction. It would have taken me 40 minutes to figure out. I've done it in 5. I've got half an hour back to get on the phone. Cool. So just finally, then, if you were to walk onto a cold desk tomorrow, how would you go about, or what advice would you give to someone to going about winning those first clients and closing those first deals?
I think making sure that you humanize your approach. I think we used to have a phrase in the old days called spray and pray, where you just hit as many people as you can with a generic sort of email and hope someone bites back and says yes. But I think the reality is, targeted approaches, humanized approaches, personalized approaches, is much more effective than mass scale generic approaches in this day and age. It's not what you know, it's who you know, and it's how you use the technology. And I think there is still this concept that anyone with a laptop and a phone can start a recruitment company. Even with all the technology at your disposal, it always will come back to people buying people, and it will always come back to who you know, not what you know. So walking onto a cold desk, the first thing will be, who do you know that's going to help you make introductions to the people that you want to know? And what does your first approach look like? Again, a lot of people make the mistake of asking on the first contact for the opportunity to work with them. Again, successful recruiters don't go into a first conversation and say, how can I recruit for you? They will offer something, market insight, an invitation to an event, an invitation to a dinner or a lunch, etc., and start building the relationship. You'll always get the quick wins, of course, but the successful recruiters are thinking about the mid to long term and building those long-term relationships, the sustainable relationships that will continue to yield because you've built that partnership model.
And I think I think you've got to give before you take with any sort of building any new relationship.
100%.
Yeah. What value can you add outside of sending CVs and hoping for the best, right? What's your
and it's about asking that question.
Yeah,
and one of the best questions I ask, and I get my consultants to ask, is, how can I build a business relationship with you and your organization? It's a non-salesy way of asking, how can I support you going forward? And I think it's a great way of opening up a discussion around that partnership scenario. Where are your pressure points? Where are your challenges? What's keeping you up at night? And how can we support you with that, given the focus of what we do? And I think once you've identified the pain points, it's easy then to define the solution that you can then adopt and provide, which will create that relationship and build.
Yeah, I used to sit next to someone whose first question to any talent acquisition professional they spoke to was, "It's my job to make you look good to the business. What do you need from me?"
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
There you go. It builds from there. Cool. Well, look, thank you very much for your time today, Nick. It's been a really good chat. Really, really interesting stuff covered.
Yeah, thank you very much. And listen, it's good to catch up with you, and good luck to HireAra as well as we continue to partner with you guys.
Brilliant. Cheers. Thank you.